Shalom. We are continuing our limud of Sefer Shmuel Aleph, and we're up to Perek Chaf Gimel. If you remember, this is the period of time where David HaMelech, or David is not yet Melech, David is a fugitive from Shaul because Shaul actually wants to kill him, because he knows that David is going to take over, and Shaul has lost his spirit with Hashem, and is suffering from a great sadness and depression. And as a result, David has gone in hiding with a number of men that have joined him. But even so, he still wants to help Klal Yisrael whenever he can. And thus the pasuk begins, V'yagidu David Lamor, David was told, Hine Pelishtim nilchamim b'ke'ilah. The Pelishtim are attacking the Jewish settlement of Ke'ilah. V'hema shosim es hagranot. And they are plundering the granaries. In other words, this was essentially theft. The Pelishtim were simply taking away the harvested crops of the Yidden in Ke'ilah. Vayishal David Bashem Lamer, and David asked Hashem. Now remember, this expression that appears very often in the book of Shmuel always means via the Urim V'Tumim. David had Evyasar, who was the son of the Kohen who was killed in Nov, and Evyasar is now the Kohen Gadol, and Evyasar has the Urim V'Tumim, and David would ask Evyasar via the Urim V'Tumim, Hine Pelishtim nilchamim b'Ke'ilah, behold, the Pelishtim are fighting in Ke'ilah, Hema sheisim es hagranas, ha'elech v'hikesi ba'Pelishtim ha'elech, shall I go and smite these Philistines? Vayayimer Hashem el David, again via the Urim V'Tumim, the lighting up of the letters, Lech v'hikisa ba'Pelishtim, go and smite the Pelishtim, v'hoshata es Ke'ilah, and save the Jewish city of Ke'ilah. So David tells his men, we're going to Ke'ilah, which means, in other words, we're going out of hiding, and Shaul will know where we are. Vayayimer anshe David elav. So David's soldiers said to him, Hine anachnu po b'Yehuda Yereim, even when we're in Shevet Yehuda, which is a friendly territory to us, because that is your tribe, we are afraid that they will turn us in, and Shaul will come and get us. V'yaf ki nelech Ke'ilah el marchos haPelishtim, and you're saying we should go to Ke'ilah and fight the Pelishtim. The city of Ke'ilah is not from Shevet Yehuda. They're not our natural allies, and they may turn us into Shaul. So it's not that they're afraid of the Pelishtim. They're not afraid of the Pelishtim, but they're afraid that by coming out in the open, Shaul will know where they are. So David asked the Urim V'Tumim again. Again, it's a little schwer. The Urim V'Tumim already said yes, but in light of this complaint, David asks a second time. V'yasef David lishel b'Hashem, v'yaneu Hashem, and Hashem answered him with the same answer. Vayomer kum reid Ke'ilah, go down to Ke'ilah, kini noisein es haPelishtim biyodecha, I will deliver the Pelishtim into your hands. Again, we don't have the opportunity to be ma'ayin too much, but the notion of a second time perhaps would be that since his soldiers were megala a pachad, that perhaps is a diminution in their level of bitachon in Hashem. By lacking that bitachon in Hashem, perhaps they're not going to be zoicha to a Yeshua. So the first answer, the first time Hashem said to go, that was presupposing they're on a certain level of bitachon. But after they complained to David and said, we're afraid, David has to ask, are they still on a madrega where they could be zeicha to nitzachon? And the answer is, afilu hachi, they could be zeicha. Vayelech David v'anashav Ke'ilah, and David and his soldiers went to Ke'ilah v'yilachim b'Pelishtim, they fought against the Pelishtim. Vayinag es mikneim, and they were able to take over all of their cattle. So they had spoils of war. V'yach behem maka gedayla, and the Pelishtim suffered many casualties. Vayisha David es Yeshvei Ke'ilah, and David liberated the Yeshvei Ke'ilah from the Philistine harassment. Vayihi Bivrayach Evyasar ben Achimelech el David Ke'ilah, Ephod Yarad biyadai. Now this is kind of a parenthetical pasuk that is explaining how did David have access to be Shayel Bashem? And the answer is because Evyasar, who was the son of Achimelech had been the Kohen Gadol, and Achimelech had been killed in the massacre of Noi Vira Kaihanim. And Evyasar would have been killed as well, but he fled and he sought refuge with David. So when Evyasar went to David, Ephod Yarad Biyadai, he took, as Kohen Gadol, the ephod, the special apron that the Kohen Gadol wore, that the Choshen was attached to. Therefore, he had the Urim V'Tumim, and that is how David was able to be Shayel B'Hashem. Okay, so David has now kind of revealed himself in his mission against the Plishtim in Keilah. So exactly what they were afraid of happened. Vayugad l'Shaul ki ba David Keilah. Shaul was informed that David is now out in the open. He's in the city of Keilah. Vayomer Shaul, and Shaul said to himself, Nikar Isa Elokim biyadi, Hashem has delivered David into my hands. Ki niskar lavai be'ir d'lasayim uvriach. Keilah was a city with walls and a locked gate. And once David is in that city, assuming the inhabitants don't really support him, he will not be able to escape, and I will get him. Vayishama Shaul eskol ha'am l'milchama. Shaul summoned all of the people to milchama, laredes Keilah, lotzor el David ve'el anashav, in order to capture David, or besiege David and his soldiers. Vayeda David ki olav Shaul machrish hara'ah, and David realized that Shaul is conspiring to do something bad to him. So once again he turns to Evyasar, the Kohen Gadol. Vayomer el Evyasar HaKohen hagisha ha'ephod, bring the ephod, bring the garment in which the Choshen is attached with the Urim B'Tumim. Vayomer David, Hashem Elokei Yisrael, Hashem, the God of Israel, Shamoa Shama Avdecha Ki Mevakei Shaul Lavol Keilah. I hear your servant has heard that Shaul is planning to come to Keilah l'shacheis lo'ir be'avuri, and he will destroy the whole city just to find me if they don't turn me over. So David's question is this: Hayaskiruni Baalei Keilah biyadai. If Shaul comes to the city and demands that they deliver me or he will destroy the city, will they deliver me? That is question one. Question two is, Hayeret Shaul kasher shama avdecha Hashem Elokei Yisrael hagedna li'avdecha. Tell me if Shaul is going to come down. So there are two questions here. And l'chayra, the sequence should have been reversed. One question is Shaul going to come down at all? And the other question is, will the Anshe Keilah turn me over if Shaul makes a demand? Now, strangely, when David asks the Urim B'Tumim these two questions, he reverses the normal sequence. He first asks, will they turn me over to Shaul? He then asks, is Shaul going to come? So actually I do have a bit of a tzarichian why the questions were asked in that order, but these are the two questions that David asks. Vayomer Hashem. So Hashem initially only answers the second question: will Shaul come down? Vayomer Hashem, Yeret. Shaul is going to come down. David then repeats the first question. Vayomer David, Hayaskiru Baalei Keilah Osi V'Yesanashai Biyad Shaul. If Shaul demands that I be delivered, will the people of Keilah deliver me and my men to Shaul? Vayomer Hashem, and the answer through the Urim B'Tumim was, Yaskiru, they are going to deliver. Now, it's interesting, just a matter of halacha, again, we don't have the time to be marich in the halacha, but assuming Shaul goes to Keilah and says, give me David or I will wipe out the city, are they allowed to deliver David in order to save their lives. Now, normally we know if the Goyim surround the city and they say, give us a Jew, or we'll wipe out the city is mechuyev to let themselves be wiped out before they turn over a Jew. This is the halacha, that it's Yehareg Val Yaber. You cannot cause the death of a person, even if that means the whole city is going to be wiped out. But that's when they simply say, give us a Jew. But what if they're miyached? What if they say, we want a specific person, we're looking for Avram or Moshe or Chaim or David? What's the halacha if they're miyached? Because maybe if that one person is endangering the whole city, halachically he may be a Reidef, and we're allowed to kill him or deliver him to be killed. So the emes is, it's a machlekes Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish in the Yerushalmi, according to one Mandi Amar. Whenever they're miyached, we can deliver him as a Reidef. And Memela, according to that, if Shaul says, give me David or I'll kill the whole city, you're allowed to deliver David, halachically. According to the other opinion, however, you're only allowed, even if they're miyached, you're only allowed to deliver him if he did something for which he's deserving of death. And indeed, the Rambam in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah paskins that the city is not allowed to turn over a person, even if the oppressor specifically asks for a person, unless that person did something for which he's chayav misa. And since Vadai David HaMelech is not chayav misa, Itaka would have been osir. So lefi the Piskei HaRambam b'Pashtus, the fact that the Balei Keila would have delivered David would not have been halachically mutter, but whatever the case is, they would have done it. So at this point, therefore, David realizes once Shaul shows up, the Anshe Keila are not going to protect him, so he has to leave the city before Shaul gets there, and at that point the Balei Keila are not watching David, so he would be able to escape. So the pasuk says, Vayakam David v'anashav k'sheish me'yasish, David and his men, around 600 people, v'yetzu me'kila, they left Keila v'yishalchu b'asher yishalachu, and they went wherever they were going. U'lishal hugada, when Shaul was told, ki nimlat David me'keila, that David has escaped Keila, v'yechta lotzes. So Shaul called off his army because there was no point. He no longer knows where David is. Okay, that's escape number one. What then happens? David is mamish, a fugitive. Vayeshev David b'midbar b'mitzados. David is dwelling in the desert areas, in mitzados, in various towers. Vayeshev Bahor, and he's in a mountainous area, in a midbar that is called Midbar Zif. Again, this is around the Dead Sea. Vayavaksheyu Shaul kol hayamim, and Shaul is looking for him all the time. V'lo nisanai elikim biyadai, and Hashem did not deliver David into Shaul's hands. Shaul was never able to find him. Vayar David ki yatsa Shaul l'vakeshes nafsho, and David realizes that Shaul is seeking to kill him. V'David b'midbar Zif b'chorsha, and David is in the midbar of Zif, but in a forest area. So it's interesting. Even in a midbar, there were areas that had a chorsha forest. And now, interestingly enough, it's kind of very moving. Yonasan ben Shaul has a secret rendezvous with his dear friend in this forest. And this is the last time they see each other. Vayakam Yonasan ben Shaul v'yelech al David chorsha. Yonasan, the son of Shaul, meets David in the forest. A secret meeting. Obviously, Yonasan had to be very sure that none of Shaul's men were watching him. Vayechazek es yadai be'elokim, and he gave him strength in Hashem. He gave him hope. He gave him courage. He gave him the bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayomer Elav, and Yonasan told David, Al tira, do not be afraid. Ki loy timtzoacha yad Shaul avi. The hand of my father Shaul will never find you. V'yata timloch al Yisrael, and you will be the melech of Israel. So even though Yonasan would have been in line, he's makir, and he recognizes that David will be the Melech. The Mishnah, I will be second in command. Unfortunately, that was not true, because as we'll read, Yonasan got killed with his father. V'gam Shaul avi yodea kein, and Shaul, my father, also knows that with all of his mishugas to try to kill you, he knows in his heart of hearts that you were anointed by the Navi Shmuel, and you are going to be the rightful Melech. Vayichresu shneim bris lifnei Hashem, and they reaffirmed their covenant in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayeshev David b'chorsha, David remained in the forest. V'yahainasan halach lebeisai, and Yonasan went home. Again, this is the last time these dear friends ever saw each other. So, David is in the area that's Midbar Zif, in that forest. But the Zifim, again, these are Jewish people, but they are called Zifim because they inherit this land. The Zifim went to Shaul Hagivasa, to the Giva, to the hill that Shaul lived, in Binyamin, Lamor. Hello, David mistateri manu b'mitzodas b'chorsha. We know where David is. David is hiding among us, in the towers, in the Chorsha, in the forest area. B'Givat HaChachila. Givat HaChachila, again, is the name of a place. It's the hill region of Chachila. This is an area within Midbar Zif. Asher mimin hayeshimon. Now, literally, this means it is to the right of the Yeshimon. So the Yeshimon means desolate, which means to say you have parts of the desert that are Yeshimon. All you have is sand, nothing grows. And then you have other parts of the desert that have Chorsha. Now, to the right, you have to understand something about biblical directions. In biblical directions, in Tanakh directions, the person is always facing east. East is considered to be the dominant direction because that is the rising of the sun. Now, when you're facing east, south is always to your right, and north is always to your left. So as a result, when we talk about an area being right of another area, that simply means south. So the Chorsha is part of the Midbar Zif that is south of the Yeshimon. So we're telling you where David is. The Zifim continue. L'chol avas nafshecha melech l'redes reid. Whatever you want to do, come down and get him. V'lanu hiskiro b'yad HaMelech, and we will deliver him to the Melech. Vayomer Shaul, and Shaul says, Baruch Atem Lashem, may Hashem bless you, ki chamaltem alai, because you have rachamim over me, to help deliver my enemy and my rival. But l'chuna hachinu ait, but make preparations, because David is slippery. He can escape from place to place. Be sure you know exactly where he's going to be on a certain day. Go and prepare, u'u es makomo, see exactly where he is, asher tia raglo, where his foot will be, mira osham, and who is seeing him there. Ki amar elai orum yarim hu, because people have told me, it doesn't say who, that David is tricky and he knows how to escape. And go and try to identify all of the hiding places that he goes to. And come back to me, Nachon, with a good report. And then I will go with you. And if we know where he is, I will go over every inch of Yehuda to be able to get him. Vayakumo, vayelchu zifa lifnei Shaul, and the Balei Zif, who lived in the Midbar Yehuda. Again, Midbar Zif is a small part of the Midbar Yehuda around the Dead Sea. V'David v'Anashav, as we said before, Bamidbar, Ma'on ba'Arava. Again, this again is the place in Ma'on, in the Arava, the plain. El Yamin HaYeshimain, he is south of the desolate desert. So apparently he moved from the forest. He knows that Shaul is coming. He moved from the forest to another place, but he is still south of the Yeshimon. Vayelech Shaul v'nashul levakesh, and Shaul and his soldiers went to look for David. V'yagidu leDavid v'yered hasela, and David went and he hid behind some rocks. Vayeshev b'midbar ma'on, again another area in Midbar Zif called Ma'on. Vayishma Shaul v'yirdav acharei David midbar ma'on, and Shaul is now going to that midbar. So Shaul is closing in. Vayelech Shaul mitzad ahor mizeh v'David v'anashav mitzad ahor mizeh. So now it's very precarious. Shaul is going up a hill, and David and his soldiers are going down the hill. In other words, Shaul is catching up. Vayhi David nechpaz lo leches mipnei Shaul, and David is rushing to get away from Shaul. V'Shaul v'anashav otchim el David v'el anashav l'tafsam, and Shaul and his people are getting closer and closer to David to capture them. So this looks bad. David looks like he's very, very, very vulnerable at this point. But as the expression goes, saved by the bell, the able to arrange things, that all of a sudden, Malach, now Malach means a shaliach, but the Medrash says it's also a Malach min hashamayim. Umalach ba'el Shaul Neymar. Shaul is about to get David, but all of a sudden he gets news. Maharav alecha, you must leave here immediately. Ki pashtu plishtim al aretz. The Philistines are attacking different settlements in Eretz Yisrael. You have to go fight the Plishtim. You don't have time to engage in your private vendetta against David. So as a result, Shaul literally had to leave the scene right before he would have captured David. Vayashav Shaul mirdov acharei David, and Shaul had to turn back from pursuing David. Vayelech likras Plishtim, and he went to fight the Philistines. And in commemoration of this event, this near defeat, near destruction of David, Al Kain Karu Lamakom Ahu, they called that location Sela, that hill, Sela Hamachlakot, the rock or the hill of division, because David was on one side of the hill, Shaul was on the other side of the hill. And because of the news of the Philistines, that is where they split, that is where they parted company. And people remembered that this was actually a miracle, so to speak, that exactly at the moment when David was most vulnerable, a milchama of the Plishtim required that Shaul leave immediately. So Ad Kan Perek Chav Gimel.